Hello. I'm really proud. I got Alex Kerr from Political X. Alex. Okay, so look, this morning there's a person on my YouTube who said, what do I know about the football crisis in with Keir Starmer? And I have to say I know nothing, because I've only ever played football once, literally then, and I had to get an 8-year-old to teach me how to kick the ball, and he was wonderful. 10 minutes, a 10-minute tutorial. I actually kicked the ball 2 or 3 times in the game. It was a charity game. I was up against some of the people who were the gladiators on television, and I managed to tackle one of them successfully. And there was the MP from there was the MP from Southampton. You know, the fellow who was ridiculed by Mercer.
Yes.
Tom.
Yes.
Anyway, he was really nice. I didn't tackle him, but I mean, I was thinking I could tackle him politically. But I liked him. He seemed a very nice fellow. And anyway, can you tell me about this? Because I think this slots into the digital culture, media, and sport thing, and it's about overreach. So could you summarise it?
I was going to ask, did you learn the name of what the actual playing area is called? Is it?
Well, this takes us back to Nadine Dorries, which gives me a lot of entertainment. What did she say? She said on the tennis pitch. Is that right?
I think so, yeah. And then the football court. Something ridiculous.
What's a golf thing called? I don't know, because that's pertinent today because of Donald Trump. It's not a golf shot. That's what someone was trying to take. A golf course. There we are. Sorry. They
And
it wasn't a hole. It wasn't a hole in one in this particular case. Routh, as opposed to A.L. Rouse, who's a sort of rather bumptious and faintly rather rude, in my experience, historian. He came up with an extraordinary line at dinner once. When somebody tried to interject, and the host said, "Oh, I think the lady's trying to talk," and he said, "I'm not interested in third-rate minds," which I thought was extraordinary.
That's awful. That's really mean.
Sexist, condescending, and rude, and this from a man who was a fellow of All Souls, where I thought the last test before you get All Souls membership is to see whether or not you're good at dinner. This man was appalling. But anyway,
I did not know that.
Yeah, there you
are. I knew what the actual application was to be able to go to All Souls. A friend of mine considered applying.
Yes.
But which is you normally get a piece of paper with a title on it, and then you've got to make an essay. So it could be like the word cow, and then you've got to have a whole.
But that
used to one person a year.
That used to be the Oxford entrance exam. I remember doing it when I was when I was a boy, and I think in my year we got courage or something like that, or what is courage? Some wag did tell me that.
Gave you a question.
Yeah, just for the ordinary Oxford entrance exam. There were 3 papers, and one paper, the general paper, was generally just as one word or 2-word question. It was lovely, and I remember that. Very Plato. Very. What is justice? And you go back to etymology. But anyway, we mustn't get distracted by Nadine Dorries, the ultimate etymological springboard. I mean, could you imagine Nadine Dorries being given a professorship? That would be so exciting. History with Nadine.
She can't even read an auto cue. Are we just going to rip into her today? Is that the plan?
No, I'm always very kind to her. I've read all her books, you know.
I've got a funny feeling where you're going to go with this.
Verbiage, but yeah, it's you could paper the room with them. It's certainly a small room.
Many people would like to, yes.
Right.
Wallpaper.
Yeah, or wet wipes.
UEFA.
Yes, tell me about this.
Yes. So just to give some context, that I'm not just some random non-expert. I do have football qualifications, and I've worked with some very big clubs and grassroots and in between.
Yeah.
So it's not out of nowhere. I'm very aware of the report that was done, I think it was 2019, basically with Gary Neville, the former chief of the FA, Bernstein, to talk about how to reform football. Because to me, and I'm sure all the fans out there, football is about the fans and the community, and that's the whole point. This is why I support my local team, Oxford. I don't go for the big guns,
but football,
I've got no interest.
Yeah, but football is losing a lot of money, isn't it? It's losing about 10 million pounds a year.
It depends on the club. So a lot of legislation that's tried to come in through UEFA and the FA is to try and financially balance everything out. And if you overspend, then you're going to be kicked out. And it's down to sponsorship deals, and it's down to revenue sources that you generate, and they have to be legitimate. So like Man City can't just go to the Qatari leaders and say, give us 10 billion, and they give you 10 billion. The FA and the UEFA and all the other bodies have come together and said, no, you can't do that. It's got to be genuine income sources because other people can't compete. So Bury and I think Wigan, maybe it was West Brom, both were suffering, and other clubs have definitely got, Notts County have gone into administration. They can't compete. The jump from a League 2 team to the Premiership is just ridiculous.
Yeah.
Interestingly, I'm watching Oxford United do that. They one of the first teams to win a major cup and gone all the way down to League 5 conference, and then they've come back up to the second league, the Championship. But yeah, it's the legislation has come through from Keir Starmer, in part because they want to change it and make it more community-based, but also more financially secure. Wait
1 second. The legislation actually is from last year, so it's a Rishi Sunak legislation. It's Michelle Donovan or Lucy Fraser, and if the report goes back to 2019, actually it does genuinely hit on Nadine Dorries. So the fact that you've got legislation which, as I understand it, it's about government interference in football, which isn't supposed to be happening, and the UEFA boss, who's a man called Theodoradis. Is that his name?
I don't know how you pronounce the name.
He sounds Theodorakis. I think it's Theodoradis. Theodoradis. I don't know. Anyway, Theodore.
So
he's a general secretary.
Yeah, for UEFA.
And
so they have written a letter to Lisa Nandy being like, we support what you're trying to do. We get it. But if you start interfering in the governance of football, that's going to be a problem. And the letter is essentially a warning shot. A lot of the British papers, right-wing papers, have sort of suggested it is a threat of a ban. And it's more of like, we get what you're trying to do. We like what you're trying to do. But just be aware, if you do a bit too much, you're not going to be... There could be problems for you. But there's more nuance than that. Because Bernstein, the former head of the FA, came out and said, we were expecting this. We think this is influenced by powerful clubs. Because they quite like the fact that everything's deregulated within football. There's a limited amount of regulation, and that they can cream money off the top and make profits and siphon it off, but also, the prestige of running a club. It's we talk about Oxford, that's part of the reason a lot of the colleges were set up, was because that was like almost the equivalent of football in its day. Rich benefactors wanted to have something that would last for a long period of time, and we've got billionaires doing the same with football these days. So I think the papers have embellished it, but there's something quite interesting here, because I was having a look at the Reform Party and Nigel Farage's Twitter account. They've said absolutely nothing about this. And it's really interesting because you've got the same sort of thing with the EU. You've got a European body arguably threatening the founders of football that if you overstep the mark too much, we might stop England playing in the Euros, which we're hosting in 2028. And that also means the Champions League. But interestingly, and I haven't seen too many comments, it could also be problematic for playing in the World Cup.
So we could be
go on.
We could be hosting an international football competition and not be allowed to be in it.
But you You'd think that the Brexiteers would have gone absolutely ballistic over this and be going, we don't need UEFA, we don't need FIFA, we don't need a World Cup, we don't need the Euros, we don't need the Champions League, we shouldn't be dictated to by a foreign body that's unelected. Nothing. Absolutely nothing.
Yes.
Because everyone would recognise, and I think you do too, that would be absolutely, I'm going to swear, batshit. That would be absolutely crazy for them to do it. But with the EU, with the ECHR,
yes,
absolutely ramming home how awful it is.
The person really to talk to about this is Chris Heaton-Harris, who's a referee. And he was the minister for Northern Ireland, and frankly, although he's had a certain amount of bad press, he was the only minister in the last government who I felt managed to achieve anything. He sorted out a lot of the mess left by Boris Johnson and Lord Frost. So if anybody should have been consulted, it should have been him. But I don't imagine he was consulted at all. I will get my magnifying glass onto this thing and try and ask him some questions at some point. But it's fascinating. I feel I'm newly converted to things football. I've got the passion of a convert, but I don't understand anything. So so it's quite nice.
In the back of the net.
Yeah, that bit is well beyond me. I think I'm just grateful if the foot makes contact with the ball at the moment, as opposed to somebody's head.
Yeah.
But it's
to be said about that.
It is quite fascinating, and it's fascinating that that your first port of call was to blame this on Starmer, whereas in fact it is quite clearly a problem set up by Nadine Dorries, Michelle Donnell, and Lucy Fraser. That core of stupidity, that trinity of chaos.
I would go back and say it's more of very powerful owners. Like we had a problem a few years. I think it was 21, where a large number of clubs tried to come together to go, we're going to leave and set up our own European league to guarantee our revenue sources.
Yes.
We were talking off air about, deregulation and systemic problems. They want to guarantee their revenue, and the whole point of these leagues and the setup is nothing's guaranteed. You've got to put on your best team and win every game to be able to stay in the league, every game possible to stay in the league, or to win the league. And a lot of the people that come into these clubs and buy them, they don't care about the fans.
Yes.
I think they're more about their own personal prestige and their interest within that than they are about the community. There are exceptions. I did a lot of a detailed analysis into what Man City have been doing and how they're trying to embed themselves in the community and the community projects they've set up. And I've seen how the FA have set up community projects and insisted that clubs go out into the community and try and bond with the people and send the players out. That's fantastic. That's brilliant. Costs very little to do in some respects. And with Man City, I feel like they've really tried to invest in Manchester. Like, not just the club, but the surrounding areas, making sure locals are employed and get opportunities within the club. But for a lot, and it was shown in the league being set up, basically saying, I think it was 4 English clubs, I think Liverpool, Manchester, Man City, and maybe Chelsea, I think it was, all saying, we're going to leave the English league. We're going to just go and play with the Italian and Spanish teams. And we're going to ignore what the fans want. It's... There is definitely a disconnect. And I felt that a lot of the... And there's a lot of corruption in football. We saw that with Qatar and FIFA. And all the bribes that they were taking.
And Russia.
And Russia. There's no way Russia should have had that tournament. And there's no way Qatar should have held it. It worked fine. Whatever. But there's an ethical practice in this, and there's also this disconnect within sports suggesting that ethics and politics and what's going on inside the country should be separated, and it should just be about the enjoyment of the game. Yeah. But football and politics go hand in hand for decades. Brazil. Part of the reason the dictatorship pushed forward football in Brazil was to win over the people.
You see,
different with the Colosseum and the Games.
or reality TV. I found it fascinating that I found it's fascinating that you've got the digital culture, media, and sport. This thing that David Mellor was the first one to set it up, having sex in a football kit. But do you not remember that? It's all the way back. It's probably before your time. And what I find so fascinating is this assumption that the arts and the arts don't matter that much. And I'd always assumed that the DCMS was more interested in football than it was in the arts, but it doesn't seem to be terribly interested in that either. It's all about very stupid people testing their ministerial potential in a ministry which isn't important. But actually, that ministry, the value of culture, the value of the arts, the value of football, the value of the Olympics and so on, is astronomically important.
Yes.
Because that's our shop shelf. That's what people see.
Yeah. It shows off your country, shows off some prestige. There's statistical data to show that if you win a tournament, productivity in your country goes up.
Yeah.
Starmer had an opportunity to go over and then meet with other politicians and chinwag. So for diplomacy reasons, can be quite useful. There's a huge number of benefits to it, and there's disdain. One of the things I found quite interesting, I was talking with someone about this the other day. Private schools not playing games against state schools. I never experienced that, so I went private. I never experienced playing any state school teams in any sport.
Yeah.
And there's that level of disconnect. And you've got this sort of... It makes you wonder, within that private sector and those that went, is there a level of disdain towards football and attitudes towards it? And that's why there's a lack of interest. But the other thing that I agree with you with, one of the things, if you want to increase the IQ of your population, sports.
Yes.
And then it's the arts, music.
Yes.
It's shown to increase IQ.
These two things are essential, and yet they're pushed to the sidelines of education. I teach a lot of students from other countries, and at the moment I'm teaching a lot of 8-year-olds, but I'm doing advanced poetry with them. Why? Because they're all musicians. They don't just play one musical instrument; they play about 4. Wow. And I'm teaching two children, and I can see the harp in the background. I think that is magnificent. And it's not what grade are you on? Grade 2 or grade 3? They're on grade 8. And so I can talk.
Wow.
I can talk immediately to them about dactyls and spondees, and whether or not this is an iamb or a trochee, and they understand what I'm talking about because they understand rhythm. And some of them, the older ones, then you suddenly think, actually I've taught some classes more recently, and I've mentioned poetry and there's been a general yawn, and then I've gone into analysing Drake lyrics, and of course everybody gets very excited because and suddenly again they're interested in how the rhythm works, and I find it such an opener. The arts
totally changes your thinking.
And what I found so fascinating playing football for the first time ever, and probably the only time in my life, is that that's also about rhythm.
Yes.
And so the move from football to dance, and my useless attempts at trying to learn how to do tap dance. It's all the same. It's all the same stuff, and it's about mental agility, and it's about this because 100%. so much of our teaching is about what is about what we retain. It's about our ability to remember facts. Actually, what we need to do is learn how to do things, so that we're no longer thinking about it. We're just doing it. Rather like walking. Walking was a very difficult thing for me. It took years, but it's. When you learn how to walk, you fall down a lot, and you're playing while you're doing it. It's very Piaget or Vygotsky, but it's anyway. Look, can we move over from football to golf and Donald Trump? Donald Trump, because I mean, I know I'm a bit rude about Donald Trump, but who isn't really? And I don't take pot shots at him, not physically, but clearly this is becoming a routine. And I don't suppose one should giggle about it really, because it's quite serious. And my instinct is that he's probably quite pleased about it, because this puts him back up in the race, because he's not doing terribly well.
I wonder how much. No, he's not. I didn't think he did well.
But he's doing well. He's doing well enough to. Yeah, but it's not about that. It's about his base, and his base is fairly secure. Yeah. And you've got to remember, Hillary Clinton was successful in her debates with him, and then lost.
That's true, but she won the popular vote, which is interesting.
But she still lost.
She got, but it didn't mean anything. Yeah. I mean, I'm not disagreeing. If you then go into the actual system of the electoral system versus the popular vote, shouldn't it just be the popular vote and that's it? Why is there this electoral system still in place?
I have no idea, but I don't think sitting in the UK we're in a position to actually debate that. It's rather rude of us to even think about dictating to a former colony. Problems. Yeah, and we can't we can't deal with.
Thought we ever do things like that.
But I think from an international point of view, the Trump situation is interesting because he's not the only potential dictator on the planet, and this is about a rise in authority, and Starmer is also equally at fault for that.
In what sense?
Well, his response to riots, he seems to have a knee-jerk desire to play the authoritarian card, particularly at the moment. It's rather like seeing a new teacher coming into the school, and he wants to give detentions to everyone to establish that he has control.
When I've managed teams, the general ethos I took from other managers, not just in football but other sports as well, was you do need to come in and you need to show there's been a change, and you do need to stamp your authority. And there's spectrums to this. I mean, even I think Arsene Wenger, the manager, very successful manager at Arsenal Football Club, even said that he would make sure 3 times a year he would stamp his authority down, even though he's quite a cool, chilled guy, and he would have a ranting match at the players. And I think there's a level of when you're going into a new team or situation, I think you do want to stamp your authority to make people aware of who you are and what your standards are and what the lines are. I think there's a balance to be had, and there's definitely a way of doing it. I mean, the riots are interesting because there's definitely problems within our legal system where others have seemingly done just as bad a crime, if not worse, and seem, from what I've read, to have gotten lighter sentences than those in the riots. And that's not to say that they shouldn't have had those sentences. Those riots were awful and uncalled for, and took away from the real crime that had happened with the poor girls that had died. I think one of the girls that died was the daughter of an immigrant as well, which got completely bypassed by the news because of these people turning up to smash up a place for no reason.
Yeah.
And there's bigger problems within the social media spectrum, which we're limited in what we're going into. I think with Trump, if we're going on to that, I'm not too concerned about that. I follow Alan Lichtman, who has 13 keys to power. He's predicted every race. At the moment, he's saying it's Kamala Harris, unless she does something majorly stupid, or something happens within the economy in the next few months. I think it's looking likely that she'll do that. I think she needs to sort out her messaging. But, when we look at that debate...
And sort out her policies.
Think he won. Yeah, they need to be tidied up quite a bit. It looks like she needs to build some trust within her team and get people she trusts into her team to then really put forward her policies. Her wording needs to be better. I think the word affordability... So she's got a really interesting housing policy. She wants to get people onto the housing market, and I think there's something to be said about that. I think that could be a vote winner, but I don't think she's selling it well enough. And it's interesting. Like Trump doesn't have the what was the thing he said? Oh, they kept asking him, does he have a policy for medicine? And he said no, but he keeps talking about Medicare, but he has no policy to replace it. I was like, that's awful. How are you lambasting something and then saying you haven't got anything to replace it? And openly telling everyone that you've got nothing to replace it. Whereas Kamala Harris has the policies, but I don't think she's quite there with the sales ability. And so essentially, what is it? Is it Plato? Yeah, it is Plato. It's the Republic again. You've got affordability. You've got the sweet shop tale. I'll say that again. My voice went. You've got the sweet shop salesman, which is Trump, versus the doctor, which appears to be Harris. I'm not saying their policies are perfect either, and it seems very on point with all of this that one needs to up their game with how they sell it, and the other one needs to up their game in actually having some substance in what they're selling.
Yes.
Does that
That seems perfectly reasonable. It's just. I find it really. I am sympathetic to somebody who has been a victim of a shooting incident, but I find it almost impossible not to think that Trump is sitting. I'm not going down the conspiracy route, but I find it almost impossible not to think that Trump isn't punching the air and saying, "Yes, there's another." That raises my profile.
It's free news.
Yeah.
Nothing happened to him. The security services seem to have done their job.
And now Biden has said that he's going.
To have worked.
But Biden has said that he's going to make sure the security forces now up Trump's security. So he's now going to get the sort of security that he would have had when he was a sitting president. Yeah. Which is extraordinary. And
considering, I mean, not January 6th, he wound up that crowd and launched them at Congress. That's treason. End of. I can't see anyone debate. I mean, people will say, he said the sentence, peaceful march. And it's like, yeah, but he said 20 times.
It's very difficult. Yeah, it's very difficult to make these cases. And we could make similar cases in Britain about people who have roused the populace by asking pointed questions that they know their base is going to respond to. But it's very difficult to then turn around and say, you are guilty of this. They would say, what? I just asked a question. Sorry. But I'm not indicating anybody. I'm thinking about anybody in particular. Not at all. And it's like it's like how much you spend. If you spend a lot on something, it doesn't mean you're going to do it, or it doesn't mean you're going to be successful. Rather. Did you know that Russia? I was told this morning. Caleb Robertson sent me a message this morning. Apparently, 7% of the GDP in Russia is dedicated to the war.
I think that's low.
No,
that's a low level.
Listen to this. This is the extraordinary thing. 0.2% of the EU budget, of the EU GDP, is dedicated to defence. If the EU just doubled that, Russia would be bankrupt and defeated. It's extraordinary when we think about. So if we statistics don't really prove anything, we can pull out statistics for almost anything, and we can pull out statements that people make to support or disparage any particular view. It doesn't mean that you can then finger point and say that is responsible. The thing which is responsible is the human response.
There's an element of that. Again, another thing that I've done. I've written books on military tactics.
Have you really?
Vietnam War. Yeah.
How brilliant! I need to get some of these. I shall buy and come along to you to have them signed.
Oh.
We should be promoting your books, Alex. There we are. Gosh, we can't see it completely. We missed one side of that there. Other way. There we are. Very good, and we like maps.
So it's our GCSE book, but I've had a couple of friends of mine who are in the military look at it and go, "This is top drawer." And I've actually lectured at Salford University.
Yeah, and the IGCSE is a solid thing.
Logistics are one of the most important things for winning a war. Like, there's multiple factors. You can't just say it's one thing. But logistics and numbers are one of the core foundations for winning. Whoever has the most wins. The problem I see is Russia's just got a huge manpower. It's got no real... I mean, the economy looks rubbish. I think the other logistic that shocks me every time is the number of motorways they have. They hardly have any. Like, you compare it to the United States.
Yeah.
And you need cars and you need trucks. Stalin said that. He said... He gave credence to Roosevelt and America and said we wouldn't have won without your trucks. We would have lost.
Yeah.
And it shows that these numbers and stats right.
Well, Russia works on... Yeah.
Yeah, go
on. Russia works on the railways. It's dependent on the railways.
Which, personally, they should be heavily targeted because they are a pigging nightmare to fix and repair. Again, this is what happened with the Germans. There weren't roads when they went and did Operation Barbarossa. They had to build railways, and it's quicker and easier to fix the roads than it is to fix up a mangled railway track. You can do it, but it's more complicated and it's easier to wreck.
I mean, this takes you all the way. It takes you all the way back to Julius Caesar, or rather Marius, doesn't it? Who got people to take their own supplies on their back and build roads when they weren't when they weren't training for war.
And the Roman roads were better than even the Victorian roads when they were privatized. And they knew exactly what they were doing.
Look, we're straying so off subject. We ought to we haven't really touched on Routh. We've mentioned him a few times, but I don't suppose we know anything about him. Do we know anything about this shooter? Because the last shooter wasn't. So you did a report where you were talking about David Gorky, who was interviewed on Sky, and this was he was blaming the left wing, whereas I think it was I think the last shooter was at least affiliated to the right wing.
Republican.
And there is an element of I mean, I'm not banging a gong here because although I think occasionally I'm a bit of a liberal academic, I don't think that's entirely what I am. But I only like the tag because it makes me feel more worthy from an academic point of view.
Professor.
There we are. But I think it's it worries me that people are peddling this rubbish on the media at the moment, like Gorky.
He's banned on YouTube and Sky brought him on.
Yeah.
Like, what is going on with researchers there? That's awful. And then the stuff he started about, he was insulting the journalist who was interviewing him. He slagged off the fact that Jill Biden was being given 13 Secret Service people. And you're going, is there some underlying sexist thing going on here? It makes you wonder. Was that the reason? Jill Biden has every entitlement to Secret Service officers. End of. They shouldn't have probably been taken away from Trump, by the looks of things. Saying all of that, he still didn't have a single shot fired at him. So you then end up going, well, then they did their job and the numbers were correct. You might turn around and say, well, maybe the perimeter needed to be strengthened. This is what Gorky said. But he just instead of, again, trying to calm down the tensions, he just was throwing fuel on the fire. Thank God hardly anyone saw that. But he was literally saying, it's all the left's fault. It's all down to the Democrats. And as I said in my video, just completely ignored January 6th, the race baiting that Trump did with Obama, suggesting that he wasn't American. Why would he do that? He tried it with Kamala Harris and then quickly changed tactic. There was other stuff that he's done, like Charlottesville, and saying there are good people on both sides. It's not as simple as just saying it's the Democrats. I'm not saying that they haven't put fuel in this fire. I would definitely say this hasn't happened. I'm not aware of this happening before until Trump turned up. And in fact, there's a clip of John McCain when he was running against Obama, where a woman in the crowd came out and said, "Oh, isn't Obama evil?" And McCain just shut it down. Completely shut it down and said, "We're not having that type of talk here. That's not it. He's an American. He's running on his own platform. We disagree, but he's not evil." Trump is going, "Yeah, he's evil." And then Democrats are going, "Well, you're evil." And no one wins apart from Russia.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the equivalence thing is a very dodgy line to go down. But when you come to Ukraine and Russia, and you get these people on social media saying, "Oh, there's truth on both sides," I don't think there is. Frankly, one side is right, one side is wrong.
I would say, I think maybe I wasn't nuanced enough there. I'm saying that Trump started this, and I've seen the Democrats go, "We've got no choice but to react. We've got to go on the offensive with this."
Yeah.
And you can argue that they shouldn't have done that.
They shouldn't have done it.
Then it gives Trump, and then you've got the fact that Trump would have continued doing what he's doing and winding up a crowd.
Yeah.
And not getting them on side as a result, and it seems to be quite effective.
I think there's an element where
it all needs to calm down.
I think there's an element where Rishi Sunak allowed that to happen in the Conservative Party during the last election, and his behaviour after the election was impeccable, but his behaviour before the election was questionable, and sad. Sad.
Yeah. When he came out and did his first PMQs after the election, I think he said a few things, and everyone was like, "Where was this guy? This guy could have been a vote winner."
Yep.
Because he was much more. He just seemed more mature, and it was like he wanted to get and fight in the dirt, and bring up crap that just smeared everyone, including himself and the country.
Yeah.
Whereas what he really wanted, I think if he'd actually gone for the statesman-like approach and gone above that, there's a chance he could have got a lot more votes.
Yeah.
And I think everyone
absolutely
in the UK and the US are getting sick and tired of this conflict.
But as I say,
I'll reiterate, Trump has actively tried to take out Congress.
Yeah.
That's what he's tried to do.
And
it's really interesting.
And he said he wants to be a dictator. You know,
yeah. He said it. You could say it's sarcasm. He still said it. Why would you say
it's very difficult. It's very difficult. And as for the Russian thing, I think it's always important to make a distinction between Russia and the Kremlin, and the Russian people are lovely. I know, I've lived among them for many years, and the Ukrainian people are lovely, but the Kremlin is ruled by the mark of Sauron. It's an evil empire, and Putin could have pulled back at any point, but he seems to have doubled down and got worse and worse. I think it's the experience of living in a fridge. Or dying in a fridge. Boris did, yes, I know.
Boris did a bit, yeah, lived in a fridge for a morning.
The lure of the Smeg fridge. We need to stop there.
Yeah, we do.
Thank you so much, Alex. It's such a pleasure, and and we'll talk again later. I think we have to do this more often. Off you go.
We do. Okay.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Click likes and subscribe. Bye, everyone.
Right.